Welcome to this deep dive. And we're going to be looking at something especially relevant as our Women's History Month. We're going to be diving into the often invisible labor of caregiving, specifically how it impacts women's careers. And the source material we're looking at today is an article called Combating Hidden Career Penalties Against Women Who Provide Eldercare. It's by Professor Michelle Travis, and it was published in Forbes. And, more people are juggling both their careers and caring for their aging parents. So it's more important than ever to kind of look into what's going on. And today we're going to be looking specifically at the challenges that women face in this situation. And, one of the things that really stuck out to me was this idea of a daughterhood penalty, which can actually impact a woman's finances even if she doesn't end up reducing her work hours. So that's one of the things I'm really curious to dive into today.
Yeah, absolutely. The data on this is really pretty shocking. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that 59% of unpaid elder care providers for people 65 and over are women, and daughters are 50% more likely to be caregivers than sons.
Wow. Yeah, it's almost like an unspoken expectation in society that the daughters will be the ones to care for their aging parents.
Mm.
And when you look at specific conditions like Alzheimer's or dementia, it gets even more striking.
Oh, definitely. Research from Working Daughters found that women make up 75% of family caregivers for adults with Alzheimer's or dementia. So while caregiving can be really rewarding, of course, it's clear that the burden falls disproportionately on women, and it really can have a major impact on their careers.
Yeah, it's almost like a hidden cost of being a woman in society. So going back to this daughterhood penalty that we were talking about before, Professor Travis brought up some research that really highlights the financial hit that women can take. And I was really surprised by some of the findings.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty eye-opening. So a 2024 study that was published in Research on Aging, that focused on working women between the ages of 50 and 60. They found that women providing elder care saw their inflation-adjusted wages decrease by an average of 4.2%. And to compare that, women in the same age group who were not providing elder care actually saw their wages increase by 2.7%.
So even if they're not cutting back on hours, they're essentially taking a pay cut because of their caregiving responsibilities. That's kind of incredible. What's the explanation for that?
Yeah, well, it's not like companies are explicitly penalizing women for being caregivers. It's much more subtle. It's sort of a stealth penalty, as Samantha Brady, the author of the study, calls it. Women who are caregivers are often passed over for raises and promotions while their colleagues who don't have these responsibilities advance. So it's like they're running in place while everyone else is moving forward.
Right, and that can have long-term consequences.
Right.
I mean, imagine you're at a point in your career when you're finally reaching your peak earning potential,
Mm.
thinking about retirement savings and all that, maybe even early retirement, and suddenly you're hit with this unexpected financial setback because you're caring for an aging parent.
Yeah, exactly. This can lead to having reduced retirement savings or having to delay retirement or even just having a lower quality of life in retirement. So the financial implications are really significant, and they can impact a woman's financial security for years to come.
It's a sobering thought,
Yeah.
especially when you consider that many women are already facing a gender pay gap,
Hmm.
you know? So on top of that, they're also being penalized for fulfilling the societal expectation of caring for their families. Like a
Right.
double whammy.
And research actually shows that this bias against women caregivers plays out in the workplace in really concrete ways. For example, studies using simulated hiring scenarios found that female applicants with elder care responsibilities were consistently penalized more than men, even when they had identical qualifications.
So even when everything else is equal on paper, that bias is still there. Really shows how deep-seated these stereotypes are.
It really does. And, this bias manifests itself in a lot of ways. Women with caregiving responsibilities may be overlooked for promotions, seen as less committed to their jobs or less likely to receive raises, even if their performance is excellent. So it's this vicious cycle where their caregiving duties further hinder their career advancement.
It's heartbreaking because so many women are caught in this really impossible situation, trying to be, extraordinary mothers and extraordinary daughters, while also trying to, build their careers and secure their financial futures.
Yeah, you've touched on a really important point. We often talk about the motherhood penalty, but this daughterhood penalty adds another layer of disadvantage for women, particularly those in the sandwich generation who are caring for both children and aging parents. So they're facing these immense societal pressures and expectations, and the workplace is often just not structured to support them.
Right. So it's not just about individual choices. It's about a system that's not really set up to acknowledge and support the reality of caregiving, especially for women.
Exactly, and it's something we need to change.
So if this daughterhood penalty is as real and pervasive as this research suggests, um, what can we do about it? Are there companies or organizations that are actually, trying to address this issue and support working women who are also caregivers?
Yeah, there are. And it's really encouraging to see that more and more businesses are starting to recognize the value of supporting their employees' well-being. And that includes, recognizing the demands of caregiving.
That's great. The article mentions a few companies like Bright Horizons and Care.com's Care for Business and CareLoop and Family First and Wealthy as examples. Um, what are some of the specific things that they're offering to help employees kind of navigate the world of elder care?
Well, they offer a range of programs. Some of them are focused on providing more flexibility, like increasing options for working remotely or adjusting work hours. And others offer paid elder care leave, which is a huge help for employees who need to take time off to care for a loved one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see how having that flexibility and that support would make a world of difference for someone who's trying to balance work and caregiving.
Absolutely. And it's not just about time off. Some of these companies go even further and offer backup or subsidized elder care services. So, imagine you suddenly need to find someone to care for your parent while you're at work. Having access to a reliable and affordable caregiving service can really be a lifesaver.
Yeah, it sounds like they're really trying to think holistically about the needs of their employees and understand that. Life doesn't always fit neatly into a 9 to 5 workday.
Right. And some even offer concierge services that can help with a lot of the day-to-day logistics of caregiving, like, things like grocery shopping or meal preparation or transportation to doctor's appointments, even help with financial planning. So it really takes a lot of the pressure off the employee who's already juggling so much.
That's amazing. I imagine the mental health support is also a crucial component. Caregiving can be incredibly emotionally taxing, even under the best circumstances.
Oh, absolutely. Many of these companies offer access to counseling or support groups specifically for caregivers.
Yeah.
And it's a way to acknowledge that, this is a challenging role that can really take a toll on your mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah, and it seems like these companies are not only doing the right thing for their employees, but are also, benefiting their bottom line. I remember the article talked about the return on investment for companies that support their employees who are caregivers.
Yeah, it's a really smart business strategy. When you create a supportive work environment for caregivers, you tend to see higher employee morale,
Yeah.
reduce stress and burnout, and increase productivity. So it's really a win-win situation for everyone involved.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer. Um, so beyond these kind of tangible benefits, is there anything companies can do to address, the more insidious issue of the bias against women caregivers? I mean, those simulated hiring scenarios where women were consistently rated lower than men, even with identical qualifications, were pretty alarming.
Yeah, those studies are a really stark reminder that unconscious bias is still very much present in our workplaces. And it can be a difficult thing to address because it's not always intentional.
Right. So how do you combat something that people might not even be aware they're doing?
Well, awareness is always the first step. Some companies are starting to implement unconscious bias training for managers and employees to help them recognize their own biases and how those biases can influence their decisions.
That makes sense. Sometimes we need to kind of be made aware of our blind spots.
Exactly. And sometimes it can be as simple as asking yourself, would I be reacting the same way if this were a male employee with caregiving responsibilities? Um, Another important step is to create really clear and transparent promotion processes where you're focusing on objective criteria and performance metrics rather than more subjective assessments that can be easily influenced by bias.
So making sure that everyone's being evaluated fairly and based on, their merits rather than on assumptions about their caregiving roles.
Exactly. And finally, it's about fostering a more inclusive and supportive work environment in general, where caregiving is openly acknowledged and valued.
Yeah, I love that idea. Instead of being penalized for fulfilling a societal expectation, women should be celebrated for their contributions both at work and at home.
Right. It's about shifting the culture to recognize that caregiving is a strength, not a weakness, and that supporting caregivers benefits everyone.
This has been so eye-opening. But it's not just about what companies can do right. What can individuals do to advocate for change in their own workplaces and on a broader scale?
One of the most powerful things you can do is speak up and share your experiences. The more we talk about these caregiving challenges, the more awareness we raise.
So break the taboo and start conversations about these issues. Don't suffer in silence.
Exactly. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your managers, talk to your HR department. Advocate for more supportive policies like flexible work arrangements and paid leave and access to resources.
And for those who may not be directly affected by these issues, how can they be allies to their colleagues who are caregivers?
Yeah, allyship is crucial. It can be as simple as offering to help out with a project when a colleague is feeling overwhelmed, or speaking up when you see someone being treated unfairly because of their caregiving responsibilities.
And I think supporting organizations like Working Daughter that are specifically focused on advocating for working women who are caregivers.
Absolutely. These organizations provide invaluable resources and support, and they're working to drive systemic change.
This feels like a conversation that we need to have a lot more often. Caregiving is such a fundamental part of all of our lives, and yet it's often invisible and undervalued, especially when it's women who are doing the work.
It really is, and it's time to bring it out into the open and create a society where everyone can thrive, both personal and professionally, regardless of their caregiving responsibilities.
So what are your thoughts on the broader societal implications of this daughterhood penalty? And are there any lessons we can learn from other countries that are doing a better job of supporting working caregivers? We'll explore those questions in the final part of our deep dive. This whole discussion about the daughterhood penalty, it makes me think about how caregiving is often seen as this like private family matter, but it seems like it has much broader consequences for society as a whole.
Oh, it absolutely does. When talented women are sidelined in their careers,
Right.
or even, forced to leave the workforce altogether because of caregiving responsibilities, we all lose out. It's a loss of, their skills, their perspectives, and their potential contributions to the economy and society.
Yeah, we're missing out on like this huge pool of talent and innovation.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that we could learn from other countries that are doing a better job of supporting working caregivers. Can you give me some specific examples? Like, what are they doing differently?
Sure. A lot of European countries, particularly in Scandinavia, they've taken a much more proactive approach to supporting families and caregivers. They have these really robust social safety nets that include things like generous parental leave policies and subsidized childcare and really comprehensive elder care support.
So it's not just about supporting mothers. It's about recognizing that caregiving is a shared responsibility. That benefits everyone, regardless of gender.
Exactly. These countries understand that investing in caregiving infrastructure isn't just like a social good. It's an economic imperative.
Yeah.
And it shows in their outcomes. They have higher female labor force participation rates and greater gender equality and stronger economic growth.
Wow. So they're taking a much more holistic approach, viewing caregiving as a societal responsibility rather than just a private burden that falls on individual families.
Exactly. That's a really key takeaway. We need to shift our thinking and recognize that supporting caregivers isn't just about helping individuals. It's about creating a more equitable and prosperous society for everyone.
It's about investing in our collective future. So where do we go from here? What can we do to advocate for these kinds of changes, both in our own workplaces and on a larger scale?
Well, I think awareness is always the first step.
Huh.
The more we understand the hidden costs of caregiving and the systemic barriers that women face and the potential solutions, the more we can start to push for change.
Starting conversations, challenging assumptions, and demanding better policies and support systems for caregivers.
Exactly. Talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues, your elected officials. Share your stories, amplify the voices of caregivers, and support organizations that are working to make a difference.
We can all be advocates in our own way, and there are concrete things we can do, whether it's supporting policies like paid family leave or affordable childcare, or simply, creating a more supportive and inclusive culture in our own workplaces.
Right. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are millions of people who are navigating these challenges. And together, we can create a future where caregiving is valued and supported, and no longer a barrier to women's full participation in society.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been incredibly insightful and honestly a bit of a call to action. For our listeners who want to explore this further, we encourage you to check out the Working Daughter website or other resources on eldercare support. And as we celebrate Women's History Month, let's remember that supporting women in their caregiving roles is not just a matter of fairness, it's a matter of building a better future for everyone.
Well said. It's time to recognize and value the vital role that women play as caregivers and create a world where they can thrive both personally and professionally.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.